Hey you guys, this is Screeching Squid 3G, and we're back with another podcast story for the night. Creepy story. It's part 2 of our Forever Experiment lore story, and we're starting off right where we left. And we're with a friend today who's joining us on this podcast story. Her name is Izzy. Nice to meet you, Izzy. Hi. And she's going to be tuning in and listening with us as we listen to the Forever Experiment, right where we left off. The creepy lore on podcast FM radio. Let's continue our story.
It's called the bends. After about 10 seconds, the person will experience loss of vision and impaired judgment. And the cooling effect of evaporation will lower the temperature in the person's mouth and nose to near freezing. Unconsciousness and convulsions would follow several seconds later, and a blue discoloration of the skin called cyanosis would become evident. At this point, the person would be floating in a blue, bloated, unresponsive stupor. But their brain would remain undamaged and their heart would continue to beat. If pressurized oxygen is administered within about 1.5 minutes, a person in such a state is likely to make a complete recovery with only minor injuries, though the hypoxia-induced blindness may not pass for some time. Without intervention in those first 90 seconds, the blood pressure would fall sufficiently that the blood itself would begin to boil, and the heart would stop beating. There are no recorded instances of successful resuscitation beyond that threshold. No official record, that is. Welcome to OA. All those things I just mentioned happened to 3. His mouth opened in a scream that had nowhere to go, and the chamber was kept on for 5 minutes as I stood in horror, visibly shaking at what had just occurred, hoping that it was some kind of prank that I would in no way ever understand. When the chamber door was open, we could fully see the blue and bloated corpse of 3 slouched as much as his imprisoning chair would allow. Lifeless. I threw up. Vance ushered me towards the bathroom to clean myself up, then back into the hallway where I couldn't find the words to yell. All I could do was repeat a single word. Why? Why what? Vance said in a genuine tone. Why did you kill that man? I asked, the bile still burning the back of my throat. He told me I didn't understand, that what we were doing is singularly unique and the results change the flow of history. By murdering people, evidently, I pointed out. Vance took out his phone and texted someone. He took me back into the hall and waited less than a minute for a door to open and the wheelchair to appear. It was a youngish Asian man, maybe 25. I know it's a racist thing to say, but I couldn't be sure if he looked a lot like 3 or was 3. I mean, it was impossible. It had to be some kind of trick, but I couldn't manage a coherent sentence. Long story short, yes, it was 3. At that moment, what is there to say? What would you say? Actually, I can answer that. If you'd say anything, you wouldn't be where I was standing. They wouldn't want you. They wanted me. They wanted someone so lost or trapped or afraid that they would be part of the forever experiments. Vance led me to a small meeting room and sat me down, handing me a bottle of water.
Forever Experiment.
I shook my head. He set the bottle down and pulled a silver flask from his suit coat, unscrewing the top and held it in front of my face. I stared at it for a moment before grabbing it and taking a pull without even smelling it. It was vodka. And my brand. Then Vance sat down and gave me the history of OA. I'll save you the unnecessary sales pitch and give you the abridged version. About 25 years ago, OA made a move to get involved with human testing of pharmaceutical drugs. It was a pretty big stretch considering their engineering background, but the dollar signs were there. 5 or so years into their testing, they came across a participant that changed what they did. He was African American, claimed to be about 40, looked closer to 20. He had no personal history of illness. He was just down on his luck and signed up for a round of testing for the money. The fact that they ever discovered who he was a fluke. See, the drug they were testing at the time had gone through all the required stages of testing before it got to human. But somewhere along the way, something was either fudged, bribed, or just downright done wrong, and the batch of drugs they were testing was tainted. Of the 6 people in the testing round, 5 died. Only 1 survived with no ill effects. He would later go on to be classified by the name 1, the only name he would ever know again. Vance said that 1 had a very peculiar anomaly on the genetic level that they were, as of yet, unable to simulate. They were, however, able to track down 5 other individuals with the same anomaly. They are the basis of our testing. In fact, they're the only humans we perform our testing on. We call them the Forevers. Saving the prolonged back and forth of me saying that I watched the man, 3, die, and Vance agreeing that yes, that was what I'd seen. He moved on to the how part. Frankly, we don't know. His body and the bodies of the others have the ability to spontaneously regenerate lost tissue. They can die, and then their body brings them back to life. For Vance, we've done more than I could possibly imagine to kill them at this point. When I asked why we would try to kill them when the Forevers could potentially be the answer for every known disease, Vance just rolled his eyes. He held up 2 fingers. First, we aren't trying to kill them. At least, not anymore. We use them to test the limits of the human body to ensure that the general population has the most cutting-edge research. Then, he added under his breath, to the people willing to pay for the information. We are a private company, after all. And second, to this day, we can't simulate what they do or who they are. And we're trying. So no, they aren't the cure to any diseases or illnesses. But that doesn't make them worthless now, does it? The scientific part of my brain, the part that still functioned and that I hadn't killed off with booze, refused to accept the words. No, it's not possible. He typed something else into the panel and a picture appeared. It was research footage. I sat there and watched over and over and over again as the 6 Forevers were killed. Shot, stabbed, burned, detonated, and much, much worse. I watched as somehow the remaining tissue from the explosion began to regenerate. Per Vance, the process is much faster if you put the remaining tissue in close proximity, or ideally a pile. It can take days, depending on the blast radius, but eventually it will reform. What happens if you don't? I asked. Put it together, I mean. Vance smiled. I think he liked that I was participating, and pressed another button explaining that for all intents and purposes, that forever they're tied to their own atoms, and that those atoms will find each other as long as they're allowed to. The video turned on what I can only call a medieval experiment.
Medieval.
For forever I'd later call 5, stood in the middle of a room, when a door lowered, instantly bisecting them like a guillotine dropping and splitting her in half.
Renaissance Festival is one of my favorite things.
Collapsed on their
Medieval.
individual sides.
Medieval.
They remained motionless for about 30 seconds.
Dun dun dun.
Before each side started to twitch and move, jerking toward the divider, toward each other. My stomach turned as each half, almost like a slug, pushed and crawled up the wall. I stared in horror as the 2 halves managed to make it to standing, perfectly in line with the other half, but divided by a wall. Their eyes, though. The eyes moved independently, spinning wildly in their sockets. If there was sound, Vance didn't have it turned on, but I can only imagine the sounds of anguish coming from it. He turned off the video and said as soon as the wall was raised, the 2 halves started to reform, with some minor psychological damage. Since then, 5 was being used to test concussions and extensive brain damage. He claimed their minds seemed impervious to lasting trauma and psychological damage, that they seemed resigned to an almost trance-like state since being brought away. Like they were waiting for something. If it wasn't so disgusting, it might almost be funny. I think Van saw that I'd had enough and he asked me if I was ready to get to work. What if I said no? What if I said no? I have no idea. I didn't say no.
He didn't
I'd
say
seen an
no.
unimaginable amount of footage showing people being killed. And then coming back to life. What else could I think of besides what they would do to me if I refused to work? I started the next day. There's nothing special about the Forevers, in case you're wondering. I mean, besides that one thing. Other than that, they're just normal people. No crazy healing factor like some comic book character or anything like that. If you stab them, they bleed.
They bleed.
And they heal about the same as anyone else. If you give them a disease, it'll run its course, or kill them. It's the major trauma that they recover from so quickly. The stuff that can or does kill them. That's when they bounce back. God presses reset. So we could test mustard gas on them, Ebola, food additives, just to see what happens. It's not great in terms for creating cures, but you'd be amazed what you can do when you see the effects on a human being. I'll refer you to a little something called Project Paperclip that allowed the United States to land on the moon before the Soviets thanks to the Nazi scientists we gave amnesty to for their extensive knowledge of human limitations.
Yes. Very great. And you know the deal, my friendly screechers. That is all the time we have for the part 2. And Izzy, I think, on the look of her joy and the funniness that I seem to show, the creepy noises and the ambiance that I'm able to provide for my viewers, I hope you enjoyed this part 2. Izzy sure has. And as always, like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell notification to follow up with these updates on parts on each story and each podcast deal that I do every single week. Thank you guys as always. Stay screechy and don't forget to squid slap with me. Squid slap. Yes, that good little slap on the face. Love you guys, and I'll see you for the next one. Peace.